You're listening to One Family, What's God Doing? Where we explore what God's doing in YWAM locations throughout Virginia. We can't wait for you to find out what God's doing today.
Welcome back to What's God Doing, and we've got Jesse Carmichael back out in nature getting bit by all manner of insects, but he's here to connect with you. So Jesse, what's God doing?
So in the last few weeks, we've had a few guest speakers and guests come in who shared some things about their life that really impressed me. We had first a speaker in our Children at Risk DTS who came in to speak about the topic of children at risk, and they were talking about the children that they had adopted, right? And this is very common with YWAMers who serve around the world ministering to children, is that many times they'll adopt children that no one else wants, children with disabilities and special needs. And I was just so moved by their compassion and their willingness to really put their lives on the line to minister to someone who really can't repay them in any way. And so that was the first couple that came. And then just last week, we had another guest who have been missionaries in Central Asia. And they've been doing the same thing, working with children at risk and taken in several and adopted several children with very severe special needs and disabilities. And I was just thinking how I would be overwhelmed with emotion, and just seeing people's broken state and their difficulties and how hard their life must be, and just crying and, oh, how your life is so bad. And I felt the Lord just check my heart and say, like, that's not the response you're supposed to have when you encounter somebody who's got a tough road in life. And I was really impressed by the way these different missionaries that I met, the way that they responded and talked about their children with disabilities. Oh yeah, they're so great. Oh, they can do so many things. And oh, this one's got a foot that's twisted backwards, and this one's in a wheelchair, and this one, but that one plays, basketball from the wheelchair, and that one does. And I was like, man, they're not weeping and grieved over the challenges that these children face, but instead these people who've worked with children at risk for many years, they have this optimistic outlook and a celebration of the life and the positive aspects in these children. And I just felt the Lord convicting my heart, saying, basically, people at risk and people who have a very difficult situation in life don't need you to weep over them. They just need you to treat them with dignity and celebrate the goodness of God in their life. And that's more, I think, of a biblical response to the pain and suffering in the world, rather than just being all emotionally bent out of shape about it. And this sounds dumb, that it's just hitting me now at 33 years of age, that's the way you respond to things like that. But as in the context of us running these children at risk schools and starting ministries, and we're running the Children at Risk Secondary School in the fall, and planning internship locations and places where people can come serve and get more credits after they do their school, and looking at these orphanages and ministries for street children and ministries for disabled children and special needs kids. Instead of teaching people to just be all emotionally bent out of shape, just have compassion, love people, serve with dignity, and give them dignity. And yeah, so it's just kind of a little bit of a mentality shift, but I think the Lord is preparing my heart to help impart to the students that the Lord doesn't want a bunch of woe is me missionaries. All these people are so struggling and it's so overwhelming, but he wants to instead give dignity and hope to people who the world may look at as hopeless.
Yeah. I think it's really important that we're pressing into this because, like you noted, you're 33 and you're like, why am I just now thinking about this? But the other reality is I've known you for a number of years now, and I've seen you serve sacrificially. I've seen you love people. And so what you're talking about is not an absence of service and not an absence of love, but as you noted, a perspective shift that we miss because, here's this DTS focused on children at risk. But what you're saying is the reality is our default is to focus on the risk. And these speakers that have come in are focusing on the children. They're not oblivious to the risk, but our focuses are on the other things, because when we encounter someone that is navigating a hardship, without realizing it sometimes, we're considering, how might this impact me? If I adopt this child with this condition, how is this going to change my life? But then you look at Jesus, and Jesus saw people and engaged and loved them in moments when others wouldn't. I think the biggest example would be someone with leprosy. Everyone else avoided them at all costs, and Jesus just went right up, put his hands on them, like interacted, because he saw image bearers rather than the risk. And so this is important. But Jesse, how do we get better at this? Like, maybe we realize it, but how do we actually press into seeing image bearers rather than being shaped by just the risk?
Well, first off, I just want to say that you communicated that so eloquently, right? The focus on the children and not on the risk. And as well, it is sometimes that compassion and that weeping we want to have is actually a selfish, I feel pain because this makes me uncomfortable. This is hard. It's hard to deal with this. And so it's kind of a self-centered thing. But to answer your question, how do we get better at this? The people that I've seen who I think respond the best are the people that have the most exposure and have really given the most to helping those who really couldn't have helped themselves, or that the world looked at as, valueless. And so it tells me that in the process of just doing it, of just showing the compassion of Jesus, of just loving people, just believing in people, believing the best for their potential, whether or not they have the same potential as someone else or can do all the things someone else can do. In the act of doing it, you learn and grow. That's the only thing I can assume, because, when you have, let's say you have a child who's special needs, you don't know what to do with that at first, but you learn over time as you love your child and you're fully committed to your child and you love your child. Now, the sad thing is, in the world, many people don't have the same value of life that we have. And, we believe that every person, like you said, is an image bearer, a beloved image bearer of God's image. And so believers all over the world are really the ones who are setting the bar for ministering to those that the world sees as unvaluable or valueless or too much trouble. And, that's why YWAM has started ministries all over the world, rescuing street children. They're the ones who are getting babies dropped off in the mailbox and, taking in the unwanted, because we see the image and the value in every human being given by God. So I don't have the full answer to that, but the only thing I can say is you just have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to start loving people, and it's in that the Lord teaches you the dignity and the value for every human life. And sometimes it's like this in our culture. Our culture tells us a lot of things that are not, or, teaches us things that are not valuable, that God says are valuable. And when we have a conflict of our culture and what we feel and with what God says, we have to take a step of faith and walk in obedience to what God says. And then in the process of obedience, he transforms our thinking and renews our mind to come in alignment with the way he sees things. And that's the process of that we call revelation, right? Revelation comes as we obey God and learn to walk in his ways.
Yeah. And I love how you push that idea of exposure, because that's accessible to anyone. Like, we can choose to position ourselves in spaces where we have to press in a little more. We can't as easily pull out, but this is what's uniquely valuable about the Children at Risk DTS is these students are going to spend a lot of time pressing in intellectually and prayerfully through the lecture phase, but then when they go on outreach, they can't just run off back to the comfort of whatever they already know, because they're going to be in places that they don't know, among people that they don't know. And so the opportunity for exposure is going to be incredibly powerful for these young adults. And so, man, it's really cool what God is doing through this, and particularly because you and I have had many conversations around this topic, and even starting back just down the hill and seeing the journey that God is taking you on, taking the staff on, and taking those that come in is amazing, because he's trying to make us more like Jesus. And so as we close out, is there a verse that God's been putting on your heart?
Yeah, the verse that came to my mind in light of this, and I'm not going to say that this is like a perfect, teaching based on the scripture, but I think it's along the same theme. as Jesus said in Matthew 10, whoever gives one of these little ones a cup of cold water because he is a disciple, I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. And so my take on that is that just simply obey God in the act of being a child of God, ministering to the image bearers of God. Do simple things to provide dignity, to provide for the needs of someone that maybe is overlooked, that is seen as lesser. And that's a part of our discipleship process. It's a part of making us look more like Christ. And I just want to encourage anybody out there, if you are YWAM or if you've done a DTS, consider doing the Children at Risk Secondary School we have in the fall, September 11th. It's going to be a powerful experience, and we have internship opportunities when the lecture phase is finished. Students can do internships of, I believe, up to a year in Central Asia, in South America, in India, in the United States, at-risk kids camps, special needs programs. I heard about one the other day. They're looking for interns. Horse therapy, okay? Wow. Horse riding therapy for special needs kids. There's all kinds of incredible opportunities for those who want to get equipped in this area. And I think the need is great in this area, especially all over the world. And in the United States, we don't see it as much because there's a lot of programs and resources and helps for special needs children and things like this. In many other countries, they're just pushed to the side. And if somebody doesn't come rescue them, they may not even live into adulthood. And so, I would encourage anyone, if you're interested, passionate about children at risk, come give a season of your life to growing and ministering to them and being sent to the nations to be a part of making a difference. And just give a cup of cold water to a child in the name of the Lord and see what the Lord does in their life and in your life through the process of your obedience.
Well, I want to thank you and the team for y'all's willingness to step into this. And really, this was God's prompting and God's idea. And y'all are just kind of figuring it out as you go and learning as you go and stepping in obedience as you hear. But I'm excited for what this is going to open up, because Jesus did say, like, no, don't see the children as risk. Like, let them come to me. And he's inviting us to the same. So Thank you for sharing, and thank all of you for listening and journeying with us as we together as one family explore what it means to know God and make him known.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of One Family, What's God Doing? If you'd like to learn more about what God's doing in Virginia, visit us at ywamva.org and join us next week for more stories of God at work.